Everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days in today's video. It's quite confusing what's going on through the 8 to 10 day period. We're going to have the warm up this week and then the thundery breakdown Friday into weekend. Quite where we go beyond that, fairly uncertain. It could be that high pressure will build back in next week and sort of reload the heat, or it could be that things conclusively break down and it turns quite a bit cooler and also quite unsettled perhaps next week. Have a look at the charts in a moment. Just want to talk about the advertising video ads on pages at GasWeathers.com. Hit play on the video ad. You'll be supporting GasWeathers.com. Thanks very much for doing that. So starting off with the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. These are for the upper atmosphere, but it's useful for seeing what's going on down on the surface. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average, and we can see that all members of the ensemble are agreeing it's going to turn very warm, if not hot, over the coming few days, going well above that red line around the 18th to the 19th of July. So we are in for a heat wave at the end of this week, and the precipitation spikes here are telling us that as things break down, and there is good agreement that there's going to be a breakdown with things cooling off as we go into the weekend. Lots of precipitation spikes, so that's telling us that there is going to be risk of heavy rain, thunderstorms, no doubt, with that breakdown from the hot conditions. If you want to know what's going on with the heat and the thunder at the end of the week and into the start of the weekend, do check out the video on the Stormwatch page, which I've already done this morning, and you can see how things could be developing at the end of the week in terms of hot weather and the thunderstorms. Now, going out beyond that breakdown period, quite uncertain what's happening. As I say, we've got quite a bit of scatter here within these temperature ensembles. Generally, the ensemble mean, which is the white line here, that's the mean of all members of the ensemble, is going to be around average. That's close to the red line, so it's showing that temperatures aren't going to be deviating far from the average. But within that ensemble, there is lots of scatter, so several members of the ensemble go quite hot again next week, whereas some actually go below average. I'll show you the reason why there's so much uncertainty about this as we get through to the generic chart, but there is quite a lot of scatter there through next week. Now, the suggestion with the precipitation is that it never really settles down completely through next week, and we have got some precipitation spikes here. Not a huge amount of them, but the ones we've got are quite significant, so if it does turn unsettled next week, it could be really quite unsettled indeed. But those rainfall spikes associated with the heat wave and then the cool down are really quite impressive, so there could be some big rainfall around next week, around at the end of the week and into the weekend. The temperature anomaly for the coming week, the 15th to 23rd of July, shows that we're in these red colours, so we're seeing temperature anomalies coming out around 2 to 4 degrees above average. A really very warm week, and a lot of that is going to be within a 2 or 3 day period, actually from around Thursday to Saturday, where temperatures are going to be way above average, particularly for England and Wales. Going to be wetter than average in terms of the anomaly, the 15th to 23rd of July, but keep in mind much of that is down to thunderstorms. Of course, thunderstorms are always very localised, although these storms will probably be quite big storms because there's going to be a lot of energy available for them, so expect perhaps bigger thunderstorms than the little thundery shower type conditions that we tend to get in this country. Could be more significant than that. Nevertheless, there will still be localised downpours, so although the anomaly for the country as a whole is coming out above average with those blue colours there for the next week, several places no doubt will miss the storms altogether and stay completely dry and may have precipitation anomalies way below average. So there's going to be that type of condition, I think, at the end of the week and into the weekend, where some places will get very, very, very wet and other places will probably miss out on all the action and wonder what the fuss is about. Now, just very quickly throwing this in, I showed you this on the last video I did on Thursday. This is the temperature anomaly for the United States, and these are in Fahrenheit, by the way. They still deal with Fahrenheit in America. Very, very cool there across many central and eastern parts of the states. The warmth, the heat is in the west, but in the population sort of areas in central and eastern parts of the state, they're having a really cool time of it. Those anomalies for the coming week are somewhere around 8 to 12 Fahrenheit below average, so a very cool summer is emerging across central and east parts of the United States. The reason is this trough of low pressure here that you can see on the GFS chart for tomorrow. There's the trough of low pressure sitting there across central and eastern parts of the states. That's come down from Canada, has got some very cool air associated. The upper air temperatures don't look that exciting. That wouldn't be that unusual for us here in the United Kingdom. Of course, America is a continental climate, so they would expect it to be very, very hot in most parts of America at this time of year, high summer. So for them, those sort of upper air temperatures are really quite cool. But obviously for us, as I say, that wouldn't be all that surprising. Would actually be very typical of what we tend to get in an average British summer. Now let's just have a look at the generic charts. It's the GFS for Sunday, and there's that thundery trough pushing away to the east. We've got a bit of a battle then between high pressure that's trying to ridge up from the Azores, and this high pressure over Scandinavia, and this next low pressure that's in the central part of the Atlantic. If the low pressure comes in, it will turn and settle next week, but if this ridge builds back up again from the Azores, then it's going to settle things down. So there we are on Monday, a bit inconclusive. The low pressure is trying to come in from the Atlantic, but at the same time this high pressure is trying to come up from the Azores. What does the latest run of the GFS do? It actually stalls this low pressure out to the northwest and builds the high pressure back up from the south somewhat. So there we go into the middle of next week with high pressure taking over the pattern. This is necessarily reloading the heat, but it certainly is pretty warm and pretty dry. By the time I get through to day 10, Friday the 25th of July, high pressure is pretty well in control. Now I should just say, but this is the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. This is very different from the midnight run of the GFS, which I can't show you, but I can assure you was a much cooler and much more unsettled scenario for next week, as that low pressure did come through early on next week and set us up for quite a cool and unsettled spell. The ECMWF has that thundery low pressure exiting the country over the weekend into the start of next week, so we're all agreed on that the thundery low will come up, break the heat wave and then slip away. To start of next week, there's the high pressure trying to come back in from the southwest. We've still got high pressure nicely over Scandinavia. There's the low pressure that could come in and turn it much more unsettled and cooler next week. The ECMWF is very buoyant in the idea that high pressure takes over next week, so by the middle of next week the high pressure really is dominating the weather across many parts of the country at 1,020, 1,025. Meanwhile, most places are dry and very warm, and as we go through to the end of next week, that high pressure is still in control, but maybe things weakened a little bit in the south, perhaps allowing some thunder, but this main low from the Atlantic is stalled out in the mid-Atlantic to south of Greenland, not able to get in. But just show you what could happen next week. Again, there's the thundery low on the GEM, the Canadian model. That sort of clears away into the start of next week. A bit of a slow process, but it's eventually go off into the continent. Then the high pressure is trying to come up from the southwest, but keep an eye on this low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, because that comes in as we go through to the middle of next week, turning it unsettled and cooler air coming in off the Atlantic, and then that sets us up for a very unsettled spell through the middle of that stage of next week, with that low pressure producing no doubt a lot of heavy rain, but much cooler temperatures as well. The high pressure down in the Azores not able to push through and send another ridge up. So there we go, we've got the GFS and the ECM looking quite settled, but the GFS is very different to its earlier run, and the GEM shows what could happen if that high pressure doesn't ridge back up from the southwest. It could turn much cooler and unsettled through next week, so pretty inconclusive as to what's going on next week, but certainly up to the start of next week we can say we're going to have a heat wave, it's going to break down into thunderstorms, and then some sort of ridge early next week will try to move back in from the Azores, but whether it makes it or whether the Atlantic spoiler low comes in around midweek, going to have to wait and see. But there is the potential there anyway, things to settle down and become very warm again next week. So obviously I'll be keeping you updated about all of these developments. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.